Imagine building walls so high, yet they crumble before your eyes. Why? Because the strongest defenses come from something you can't see. This is the story of how one humble man discovered this powerful truth. In the ancient kingdom of Valoria, there lived a powerful king named King Alaric. Known for his grand palace, his mighty army, and his unmatched wealth, King Alaric ruled over the land with authority, but not always with fairness. Although the king's decisions were respected by all, they were often harsh and rarely questioned by the people. The king believed that his power could bend anyone to his will, and thus, he ruled with an iron hand. In a quiet corner of the kingdom, however, there lived a humble weaver named Elias. Elias was known for his intricate craftsmanship, his soft-spoken nature, and his habit of helping others. Despite his limited means, he was always kind, offering assistance to anyone in need and never expecting anything in return. His kindness was a thread that bound the village together, much like the delicate fabrics he wove. One day, word reached Elias's ears that King Alaric was holding a grand celebration to commemorate his 10th year on the throne. Artisans, craftsmen, and traders from every corner of the kingdom were invited to present their finest work to the king, who would select the best pieces to be showcased in the palace. Elias, though humble, decided to present his finest cloth, a fabric so beautiful and intricate that it shimmered like the morning sun. He packed the cloth carefully and began the long journey to the palace. Along the way, he crossed paths with a merchant named Merrick, who was known for his sly nature and sharp tongue. Merrick had always looked down on Elias, seeing him as weak for being so kind to others, especially when there was nothing to gain. "So, you're going to the king's celebration, Elias?" Merrick sneered. "Do you really think your humble little cloth stands a chance against the grand treasures of the other artisans?" Elias smiled softly. "It's not about winning, Merrick. It's about showing what I can do with love and dedication." Merrick scoffed and rode off, leaving Elias to continue his journey with patience and quiet confidence. When Elias reached the palace, it was more magnificent than anything he had ever seen. The walls sparkled with jewels, and gold adorned every corner. As he entered the grand hall where the king sat on his throne, he was greeted by the sight of hundreds of artisans presenting their finest works. There were golden sculptures, intricately carved woodworks, dazzling gems, and paintings that seemed to come to life. When it was finally Elias's turn, he bowed humbly before the king and unfolded his cloth. The fabric shimmered under the palace lights, its fine threads weaving together a story of the land, the rivers, and the stars above. The entire hall fell silent as they marveled at the delicate beauty of the cloth. The king, however, barely looked at it. His attention was caught by the merchant Merrick, who stood nearby with a chest of glittering gems. "Your Majesty," Merrick called out, "while Elias here offers a simple cloth, I bring you treasures that are worthy of your throne. Look at these jewels. See how they sparkle like the sun." The king, dazzled by the sight of Merrick's jewels, waved Elias away dismissively. "Take this cloth back to the village," the king ordered. "It is nothing compared to the riches presented here." Elias bowed again, quietly gathering his cloth. Without a word, he left the palace, his heart heavy but unbroken. On his way back, he passed Merrick, who smirked at him. "What did I tell you, Elias?" Merrick said with a sneer. "In this world, only power and wealth matter." Elias nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps you're right, Merrick. But we will see." Months passed, and the memory of the king's celebration faded. The kingdom returned to its normal rhythm, with the rich growing richer and the humble going about their lives. But beneath the surface, something had changed. The people of Valoria had begun to notice how the king's decisions were often swayed by wealth and flattery. They saw how those who had less were pushed aside, while the wealthy merchants grew more powerful. One day, a strange rumor began to spread through the kingdom. It was said that in a far-off land, a neighboring king was plotting against Valoria, preparing an invasion that would wipe out its people and take its riches. Fear began to creep into the hearts of the villagers, and even the mighty King Alaric began to grow uneasy. To protect the kingdom, The king called for the finest builders and craftsmen to create fortresses and walls to defend against the coming threat. However, every time a fortress was built, it crumbled. No matter how much gold the king spent, the walls would not stand. The kingdom's defenses were failing, and no one could understand why. One evening, as the king paced nervously in his chamber, an old advisor approached him. "Your Majesty," the advisor said, "perhaps it is not strength or wealth that can protect us now, but wisdom. There is a weaver in our kingdom named Elias. He has a reputation for his skill and kindness. Perhaps he can offer us guidance." The king, desperate and unsure, sent for Elias at once. When Elias arrived at the palace, the king greeted him with far more humility than before. "Elias," the king said, "my kingdom is in danger. Our walls crumble, and our defenses fail. I have called upon the greatest builders, yet nothing works. Can you help us?" Elias looked at the king thoughtfully, then at the walls of the palace. "Your Majesty," he said, "the strength of your kingdom does not come from its wealth or its walls, but from the hearts of your people. You have relied too much on gold and power, while neglecting the very hands that built your kingdom." The king frowned. "But how can I protect my kingdom without walls?" Elias smiled gently. "Sometimes protection comes from within, not from without. Let me show you a different way." For the next few weeks, Elias worked tirelessly, not on building walls, but on gathering the villagers together. He taught them the value of unity, of working together, and of caring for one another. Slowly, the people of Valoria began to come together as they had not done in years. They wove bonds of trust and kindness, just as Elias wove his cloth. As the invasion approached, something remarkable happened. The people of Valoria, standing together as one, created a defense that no wall could match. They supported one another, helped rebuild homes, and stood side by side to face the threat. When the invading army arrived, they found a kingdom not divided by wealth, but united by its people. The invaders, seeing the strength and unity of Valoria's people, retreated without a fight. The king, watching from his palace, finally understood what Elias had meant. It wasn't wealth or power that protected a kingdom, it was the strength of its people. Overcome with gratitude, the king rewarded Elias with gold and jewels, but Elias humbly declined. "Your Majesty," Elias said, "I have no need for riches. The only reward I seek is a kingdom where people help each other, not because they must, but because they wish to." The king nodded, humbled by the weaver's wisdom. But as Elias turned to leave the palace, he saw a familiar face, Merrick, the merchant. Merrick, who had once mocked Elias's kindness, now stood with his head bowed, ashamed of his greed. Elias approached him and smiled. "Merrick, do you see now? The greatest wealth is not what we take for ourselves, but what we give to others." Merrick, humbled by Elias's words, finally understood. From that day forward, he, too, changed his ways, no longer seeking only profit, but also looking for ways to help those around him. What you give to the world comes back to you. Greed and selfishness may bring short-term gains, but kindness, unity, and cooperation build a foundation that no amount of wealth can buy. Did this story show you the power of kindness and unity? If so, give it a like. Share your thoughts in the comments about how kindness has impacted your life, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories from Happy Heart Stories.